Thank you, Brad. We had a lot of questions since the maintenance conference when we went through this plan, and we don't have time today to go through the plan, but I thought it'd be important to at least share how to get to the plan, which was probably one of my top questions. And this was a presentation that I had at maintenance conference. I'll skip through a little bit here. Just for your information, these are the folks that were on the Snow and Ice Control Committee that put this plan together. Now, the plan is on the Maintenance Division SharePoint site. If I click on that link there, it would go to it. But what I've done is provided you with a way to see. Is there a pointer on here? Okay, thank you. This page here is the home page for the Maintenance Division. On this left side, there's a button right here, SharePoint site. You can also click here, but there's a couple of extra steps to take when you do click on this link. If you'll click on this link in the blue section, it'll take you to this page. If you're familiar with SharePoint, you do have to log in to SharePoint, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times. But once you get in there, it's pretty good. This is the page that comes up after you finish logging in. And obviously, this would be the winter storm plan button here. You click on it, and you get statewide storm plan 2015. This folder here, incidentally, is the folder that is holding all the old plans that we all redid in 2010, 2011. We just did not remove that. Clicking on the plan folder, you get to this next page, and here's the plan right here, 2015 Snow and Ice Plan. So if you click on that PDF file, the plan will come up. Inside the plan, that's Mr. Hale's letter that came out. Inside the plan are links. There's 10 sections to this plan. Each link will take you to, the appropriate file for that subject. And I'll just click through the plan, each section. You can see how many links there are that are tied to this plan that are all on the SharePoint site, supporting documentation and such. This is the Tier 1 statewide winter map. There's the definitions of the tier system. This is the description of the roadway treatment by tiers. In the statewide plan, we only address Tier 1. We allow Tier 2, 3, and 4 to be addressed by each district as appropriately. Level of effort, there's a lot of discussion about this, and you can click on the LOE summary link, and it'll take you to each district's level of effort spreadsheet. And then Section 10 is training suggestions for winter storm preparedness. That's the Brownwood map, and we don't have time to go through all this. So with that, that's how you get to it, and that's just a very quick overview of the current plan.
Thank all y'all for sticking with us. I'd actually thought I'd give $1 to everybody who came to the presentation, but I thought there were going to be 2 or 3 of you that stuck out to the end, and I'm honestly too cheap to do that now. Okay, we're going to run through this right quick. A lot of y'all may not be interested in all this stuff, but this is based on our brine operations there in the Lubbock district. What we're going to try to do is buy our brine from a producer. We are preparing brine makers in all of our sections, but we think it's more efficient for us because we do have brine producers in our district, several of them. We think it's going to be much more efficient for us to purchase it and have it delivered to us. This is how we're rigging up with our storage capacity. You can see the key over there, 10,000-gallon poly tanks. We already had a few 2,500-gallon poly tanks in the district. We're going to locate them in a couple of our smaller sections. Then we're going to have 6 frac tanks in different sections. Our purchase of frac tanks has fallen through this year, but we should have some rentals delivered next week, And so we'll still have those tanks and that storage capacity in place. And that's what a frac tank looks like, and this is what the 10,000 gallon poly tanks look like as they come in. This is one of the purchased brine makers that many districts are getting. We have one of these in our district. We did use this last season. You can see the netting on there. Some of the salt that we used last year was not the cleanest in the world, and we had to put the netting on to catch some of the sediment. But that worked out pretty well. This is what we're going to end up using is homemade brine makers. All 18 of our maintenance sections have either completed making one or are in the process of building one right now. This particular one is going to be located in an area that doesn't have power run to it, so we've got a gasoline pump that's going to be used to transfer the brine. A couple of our sections are getting, this was all that was there when I took the picture. It will have a roof on it and sides. The front will be open. The brine maker will slide inside. There's not enough clearance overhead to load the saturation tank on the brine maker, so what we're planning on doing is just pulling the brine maker out far enough so that that tank is exposed out the front of this shed, and then they'll load it that way. After the storm's over, they'll push it back into the shed. This is one of our current setups at our northeast Lubbock section. Got the salt bin on the left, and then the brine maker, you can just barely see it back in there on the right-hand side. This just a couple of shots of existing, some of the latest salt bins that have been built. These have lumber trusses in the roof, all the metal connections, the connection plates. I can't remember what they call those. I'm a little worried about them, whether they'll hold up, but hopefully they will. It's amazing how, even though you've got a metal truss 14 feet up in the air over salt, it still tends to corrode away. So we'll see how these hold up. We were lucky enough to be the recipients of some donated salt down around Andrews. It was a property owner who had a couple of evaporation pits, and they were moving off this property and needed it cleaned up. So they looked and thought it was going to cost them about $300,000 to dispose of this salt. So they donated it to TxDOT. We understood there was about 1,000 yards or so in there, and every time a loader dipped into it, it grew. So we've shipped about 1,300 yards to El Paso. We've hauled about probably 23 to Lubbock, and Abilene is getting ready to haul some, probably the balance of what's out there. And that's, you can't really tell a whole lot about the salt, but that's some of it that's been hauled out. Did have some clumping in it. There's some sections of the rubber liner out of the pits that that was torn out in it, but it's been pretty easy to clean up. Now I need a show of hands. How many of y'all want to go through what brine is and how it works? Does everybody already know? Does anybody care? Okay. Is anybody still out there? All right. Okay. If y'all don't want to know about it, we'll just zip through all this. This is one interesting concept of it, though. You could go tell a lot of different things about this particular picture, but what this is, I took a plastic cup full of 26% brine, which is what the producers make for oil field use. Originally, that bolt in there, I was going to illustrate how brine is corrosive to our maintenance section supervisors in an attempt to make sure they knew that we need to clean everything up. Well, what I didn't know is I had a brass bolt, and so it never did corrode. But what I discovered was, as that brine, as the water evaporated out of that brine, that 26%, that's 26% is the maximum it could be. So as the volume of water evaporated, the brine started crystallizing, or the salt started crystallizing out. It grew up the insides of the cup and all the way out the outside, and actually started covering the top of the table that this was on. So that kind of illustrates just how much salt is in this stuff. Seawater, which is what everybody thinks of when they think of this, is I think around 3% brine or 3% salt. This brine is 26 when it's saturated. We utilize it at 23%. So it's a lot more salty than seawater. We did all of our hauling of brine last year. We did get a contract, but it was for picking up brine, so we hauled all of it with our special crew. Like I said, when they produce it, it comes out at 26%. We want to store it at 23%. So we worked up a little spreadsheet here, so when a load showed up, you kind of wonder how much water do we add to that to make it diluted to the right concentration. And this is kind of a shotgun effort to do that and give them a good idea of how much water to add to that load. Like Carl was showing, this is our Tier 1 roads, US 84 across Garza County and on into Lubbock, and then I-27 from Lubbock north. A lot of writing on there, but that just gave some quantities of how much one of our sections in Lubbock County, the southern section, how much it would take. This kind of illustrates, if you take the time to go through that, how important your storage capacity is. We've talked a lot about the concept is you make your brine beforehand, and you've got it sitting out there, and when it comes time, the storm's on its way, you get out there and shoot it. And that's great. That's what should happen. The problem you run into is when you've got a long duration storm, or you have multiple storms coming in back to back. When you don't have good weather, when you shoot all your brine in pre-treating and you don't have good weather to make more, you're going to be out there making it in bad weather if you don't have a producer to order it from. And that's one reason why we are getting contracts in place to have ours delivered by a producer. Now, we do have brine makers, because I fully expect in the heart of a storm, when we call and say, we need you to bring us some brine, they're going to say, are you out of your mind? Look at the roads. We're not bringing that to you. So we feel like we've got to have brine makers in place to make sure that we are able to come up with it. Another major problem with that is, in order to make brine, you have to have salt. We've got a limited quantity of granular salt storage in each one of our sections. Right now, thanks to the donated salt, we're pretty well stocked up in every one of our sections. But if we have to make brine to fill those storage tanks to get ready for this season, we will not have any salt left. So we're hoping our brine delivery contracts come through here pretty quick. I think that's the last one. We're not going to do questions yet, so.
All right, I guess what we want to do, we don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm just going to kind of open it up for questions from the audience to the panelists. I guess anything that's related to winter weather, planning, or best practices. We got 4 folks up here that be very capable of answering any type questions related to that. So does anybody have anything? Okay, not seeing any questions. I guess I'll ask one. If y'all don't mind, if each one of y'all maybe, or whoever wants to tackle this, but I just want to hear a little bit about what best practices y'all do use in your districts related to winter weather.
Well, one thing that I'll mention, you saw the incrustation of salt on that cup. It is very, very, very important to keep your equipment clean. Our maintenance sections, fighting the storm is not over until they've cleaned their equipment after the storm's gone. we're utilizing our herbicide rigs to spray brine, and that makes me a little bit nervous. I sure do wish we had dedicated units for each one, but it's extremely important that you wash those pieces of equipment out. Every once in a while we'll come out and see a salt spreader that still has salt in it a few days after a storm, and that's just asking for them to go down. So it's extremely important to keep everything clean.
One of the things that we're doing in Brownwood is we're using the level of effort spreadsheet. It tells each maintenance section their lane miles, amount of brine that they need, similar to that last slide I think Ted had up there that he was calculating. Every district has gone through this, and it's out there to use. And as you get brine makers, you can adjust your sheet to fit your need. It'll help you see your storage need. It also has an area in there where if you don't have a brine maker in a maintenance section, you have to go to another maintenance section to pick it up. That's turnaround time, extra time needed. So it'll help you calculate the amount of time that you need to take care of your sections. So that's one practice that we're doing in Brownwood.
Hello? Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
In Tyler, I'll probably talk about something that we're going to implement this winter, so it may be a best practice by next winter. But we're going to start using the serrated blades and then also the bullet tooth blades that incidentally use the same mill teeth as our mill machine, so that's pretty convenient. And then I'm also going to try a product from VariTech called Ice Slicer, because we don't have all of our brine making up and going yet. So it's just kind of a backup plan in addition to our meltdown. So that's kind of a couple of backup plans for us.
One of the things we've done in Fort Worth is with DFW Airport, we have added it to the priority 1 list. It's not on an interstate, but we have added it because it is such an economic driver for everybody in the area. So we've added it, and it's one of the roads that we put our brine on. And we will have 4 machines up and running this year, so we won't be going back to Dallas every 20 minutes. But thank you for last year for saving us. We appreciate it.
Okay, we have a question.
For so many years, been using magnesium chloride and saying it's environmentally friendly. Now we're moving to salt. Have you guys got any pushback from environmentalists why we're putting salt out?
One of y'all maybe want to repeat that.
Well, the essence of the question, I think, is in the past, environmentalists have kind of, or brine has been an environmental problem in the past. Is that kind of the essence of the question? And that's true. It does cause problems. Brine is not new. It's been around for a long, long time, and TxDOT used to use brine. But the way brine was used was to take a water tanker, open the valve, and take off down the road. So you had no idea how much you were putting on. And where the problems come in is where it concentrates and you get runoff. Is that salt carries off, you get a lot of vegetation damage out of it, and that's one of the primary problems with it. Out in my area where we don't really have any water, any bodies of water that it runs off into, but if you've got freshwater lakes and streams, if you've got large quantities running off into there, then that's an environmental issue too. The difference between then and now is that we're metering what we put down. Whereas they used to just flood it, now we're utilizing our herbicide rigs and dedicated rigs, but they're all calibrated to put out the proper amount. So we shouldn't be seeing a lot of runoff. Now, does that eliminate it? No, because that's the idea behind this pre-treating is you go out and you spray it, the water evaporates, and you leave a layer of salt. Well, next time it rains, that salt's going to get washed somewhere. So we will have to watch how things go over the next few seasons. But I think the impacts from it are going to be much less than what we used to see because of the way we're applying it.
Okay, another question?
Do you y'all have plans to go to Washington
question is, do we have plans to wash our bridge decks and concrete structures at the end of the season? For Brownwood, no. We've had quite a bit of conversation about that on the Winter Storm Committee, and I don't remember the reference of the research project, but there was a research project done up north that determined that that's really not effective to do that, and that you'll just run your costs through the roof trying to do it, and then essentially you don't make any ground trying to take care of that. That rain will take care of whatever you need taken care of. Seems kind of odd that it works out that way, but that's basically what that research project showed. But no, in Brownwood, we don't have any desire to do that at this time.
We're not planning on it either. It really takes such a massive amount of water to really wash that stuff off that it's really not worth it.
In Tyler, we get so much rain, it's really not an issue.
Yeah, we're not doing it in Fort Worth, and we don't have a plan to yet.
Was there a question over in this area? There we go.
It's going to be interesting to see how this goes.
Want to repeat that?
Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, do we anticipate seeing any problems with our structures, our concrete barriers? So I really don't know how to answer that.
In Lubbock, we probably use about as much salt as anybody in the state. And do we have damage from it? Yeah, we do. But it's not a huge amount of damage. Even as much as we use a fraction of what the northern states use. And the public pressure to keep things going, I don't know that we have any choice anyway. But I don't think the use of brine is going to make that big an issue, because when we have used granular in the past, you've got moisture there, and that's how the granular works. It creates brine when you put it down. So we're not putting anything different on there, really. Well, again, we'll have to see how it goes, but I don't see this making a very big impact on that.
Okay, any other questions? Still got a little bit of time.
Well, the question was, I was tasked with supplying the state with salt from the Morton salt mine that's right in my backyard, and what were the issues associated with that. And I guess the main one, I could really pinpoint it, is that the Morton's set up to supply table salt and, those types of things. They're not set up to supply thousands of tons of salt on a daily basis like we demanded. And so it was a stress on them because they weren't supplying their normal vendor customers. And then it was hard on us because it took us, we were still doing it in April, trying to resupply everybody. So it was, that's all my special crews, that's me having to figure out invoices and for months and months and months. So it's just not really set up for that type of operation, that kind of demand. That answer?
Go ahead.
The question is, have we been able to lock in our pricing on salt purchases for TxDOT? Correct? To my knowledge, no. We issue POs and requisitions, and purchasing section takes care of that. And as far as I know, we're not locked in for 2 years.
But we don't have a contract in place with Morton right now.
Yeah, well, Morton, but on the other companies, we're not locked in either, right?
We weren't locked in, as I understood it, long-term. We had some short terms, but then when they went
It was a bidding.
when they flooded and couldn't supply, then it became
Right.
a
They
moot
just
point.
bid on each PO each requisition that goes out, they bid on that, and when we use up that supply. Yes, we do have a contract with United that came out the other day. You're right. The quantities on that PO are set quantities at a set price. If we're able to extend that quantity, I would hope that price would tag along with it. Now, my understanding is that particular PO that's out there right now was set up so that we could stay under $1 million cap. And if we extend any of those quantities, then it'll go over the $1 million, and it'll have to go to the administration for signature to add quantity to that. So that I would anticipate that's where we're going to be very shortly when everybody starts ordering. But thank you for reminding me about that.